Hey guys, my name is Cory. I'm one of the owners of Blue Alpine freeze dryers. I just want to talk today a little bit more on the technical side about what freeze drying does and kind of like what it does to food. There's a lot of things you can do with freeze drying as far as like preserving scientific samples and things like that, but we're not going to get into that today. We're just going to be talking about how it pertains to food. So the goal of freeze drying is to reduce the water content in the food down below like something like 4%. The lower the better. I mean, if you could get to 0%, that'd be awesome. But the goal is to get it below 4%. And if you can do it gently, and you can do it like you can do it like with the temperature and the pressure very low, then what happens is you're able to preserve the nutritional content of the food while at the same time increasing the lifespan of the food. So with a lot of things, you're able to get the lifespan up to like 30 years or more, essentially. Anyway, so that's the goal of freeze drying: is to reduce the water content in the food while maintaining the nutritional value and increasing the shelf life of the food. And if we can do that at home, that's awesome. That's what our goal is. So as far as so let's draw a graph as far as like what's happening inside of the freezer or freeze dryer to the food and to the pressure. So let's start with this. So if you have a graph here, we're just going to call this increasing. So there's going to be a few variables on this side of the graph, but this is just increasing, and then this is time. So a normal cycle, not including candy, but a normal like food cycle is going to be about 24 hours, and then candy cycles, I mean, they're going to be a lot shorter. But anyways, so what happens is, let's say I just pulled out a bucket or like a cookie sheet full of chicken out of my oven. I'm going to let that chicken cool down before it goes into the freeze dryer. Let's say it starts at like room temperature when it goes into the freeze dryer. So we'll call that room temperature chicken right here. And then I turn on the freeze dryer. It's going to get down to like negative 40 degrees. And our goal is to create ice crystals within that food that we can then take and sublimate out. Or in freeze drying for food, it's called lipolization. But sublimation, it's the same thing. You're just trying to get the water to evaporate out of the food without boiling it off. So this is room temperature chicken. That's the temperature of the chicken right here. As we cool it down, it's going to drop to something like negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit or Celsius. About negative 40 is where those two graphs converge. But anyways, negative 40 degrees Celsius or negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Once it gets down to that level, it's going to stay there for a few hours, make sure that it's really cold, and then it's going to gently start turning on the heat. So we'll call this kind of the start of the actual dry cycle. So we'll call this the freeze cycle. And we'll call this the dry cycle. And this usually is about 8 hours. With ours, you can push it to like 4 hours with a fan. But a good number is, a good round number, we'll just say it's 8 hours, because that's enough time to make sure that everything is super, super hard as far as, super, super frozen. So anyways, so this is the start of the dry cycle, or freeze cycle here, and then dry cycle right here. So our food started at room temperature. It came down to negative 40. The pressure in the chamber hasn't done anything yet. So our pressure is essentially the same. So our pressure is just atmospheric pressure, just whatever your pressure is at your altitude. So once we hit the dry cycle, there's going to be two things that happen. One, we're going to turn on the vacuum pump, and then two, we're going to turn the heating pads. So that does a few things. So if we turn on the vacuum pump, we're going to drop the pressure hardcore. Pressure is going to drop almost immediately, drops within just a few minutes, and it's going to get down, really low. And then as we put it under vacuum, we're also going to turn on the heat of the shelving unit. So once we turn on the heat, there's so much water in the food that needs to come off that you have this increase in pressure. So I'm going to draw, this is going to be besides the graph, but I'm going to draw a little piece of chicken right here. So let's say this is your little cube of chicken that you've created to be freeze dried. Inside of this little piece of chicken are tons of water molecules that are frozen. They're frozen inside of this piece of chicken. The goal is to get these water molecules out of the chicken and to be able to stick it to the walls of the freeze dryer. So if you're looking at the barrel of the freeze dryer, the goal is to stick the water to the walls of the freeze dryer in the form of ice. So the thing is, as I increase the temperature on this chicken, these water molecules are literally they literally act as pressure or like gaseous pressure. So as they jump out of the food, as these water molecules jump out of the food, what we notice is that there's an increase in pressure. So what we notice here on the graph is as we start to warm the food, so let's say we start warming the food, there will be this giant increase in pressure. So the goal is to increase the food in temperature for long enough that all the water comes out of it, and eventually you're going to notice that the pressure is going to start to decrease. So anyways, I'll show you what that looks like. So as we increase the pressure or the temperature of the food, it goes up, and it's going to kind of have this like smooth ramp, kind of like that. And then so this would be -40, and this would be positive like 120 degrees Fahrenheit, because this is going to be the end of cycle, and we'll just level it off right here. That's positive 120 degrees Fahrenheit. So what happens is the pressure of the food, as you increase the temperature, not the pressure of the food, pressure of the chamber, the pressure of the chamber is going to increase and then slowly decrease, and you're going to end at something like 500 millitorr. So the graph does this like, the temperature of the food and the pressure. They do these like this kind of dance where as you increase the temperature of the food, the pressure also increases. But as you let that happen for a certain amount, for say 24 hours, then all of a sudden there's no longer going to be any more water in this food. All of a sudden all this water has come out, and there's no more water to create more pressure. So as there's no more water, the pressure drops, and then we get the 500 millitorr. So during the cycle, you're going to be looking at pressures of like 1500 millitorr, or with candy, I mean ours is set at like 13,000 millitorr. But then at the end of the cycle, that's when you're looking at 500 millitorr. So if your unit is saying during a cycle it's saying, hey, it's like 1500 millitorr or it's 2000 millitorr, that's totally normal, because what that is that's the water here in the food jumping out and creating pressure inside the chamber. But once that water is gone, then you should see the decrease in like 500 millitorr. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that's not too in depth, but like I said, just wanted to get a little bit more technical about exactly what's happening in the food. I'm going to try to do some more technical videos like this, talk a little bit more about like preservation of proteins and things like that. But for now, we'll just keep it here. So anyways, thanks for watching.